the last thing I have to talk about today is, of course, those of you who have been listening with some regularity may remember that a few weeks ago, we did a great Jams and Team Music quiz, and Jake won, and as a result got to assign me, Morgan, and August discographies of artists of his choice that we had to listen to and review week by week. And so last week I was slack. I didn't get around to listening to and processing the first album from the discography I was assigned, which is the discography of Muse. But I have caught up, and so I have re-listened to the debut album from Muse, 1999's Showbiz. And the thing about this record is, so it's generally the narrative of Muse, the conventional narrative is that they were, they started out as this really exciting, bombastic, larger than life rock band with these kind of huge stadium ambitions, and they kind of reached and scaled those heights. And then they just kind of, essentially the narrative is they just kind of like disappeared up their own ass and became like the kind of inevitable, I guess, trajectory of a band that is trying to do shit in the way that Muse are, trying to like be a significant, meaningful band that kind of just disappear into the ether, essentially. And we'll see how that narrative tracks with their new album, which is coming out soon. But that's the narrative of Muse, right? The early stuff, great. The late stuff, shit. They lost it. They just went too far. And while there are Muse records I like, I have significant reservations about fully embracing that narrative because, and we'll see how their most beloved records like Origin of Symmetry and Absolution, Black Holes and Revelations, all of which I have very fond memories of, we'll see how they hold up. But I have to say, Showbiz fucking sucks. I hated listening to this. I fucking hated listening to this. This was utterly fucking mind-numbing. And
I hope you just hate all of them. That would be so funny.
You're really funny.
So the thing about Showbiz is it's the roughshod debut, right? It's the Pablo Honey, it's the whatever you want to call it. It's the record where the band are clearly they have those ambitions. They're sort of just gearing up. They're warming up. They're sort of settling into a particular mode. They are clearly of a time and like in relation to other bands more than they are their own thing at this point. And that's fine. That's the debut record for so many bands. And obviously the comparison that gets lobbed at Muse for Showbiz is Radiohead. And certainly it is what I would term a post OK Computer album. It's an album where, the effects of OK Computer, this landmark rock record that kind of shifted the face of alt rock, are obviously clear. There's no way that any new bands coming out around that time are not going to be influenced by that in some way. And I've seen a lot of people compare Matt Bellamy's vocals, particularly in the early era, to Tom York. And there are some similarities. They can hit similar sorts of registers when they go for that really whiny falsetto mode. And interestingly, the moments at which they sound alike are, the moments at which they are at their most kind of melodramatic, which is interestingly something that Tom York basically stepped back from entirely, more or less, after OK Computer. When you think of the similarities between Matt Bellamy and Tom York, it's really like you're thinking about Showbiz Matt Bellamy and you're thinking about the Bends Tom York. It's a shallow comparison, but it's absolutely one that I suppose has some weight. And the difference is that Matt Bellamy has a fucking terrible voice, and I don't give a shit that he was classically trained. I don't give a shit that he has, he wets the panties of fucking girls with Oedipus complexes all over the globe. Like, I don't give a shit about any of that. Of course, he would refine his voice, and he does sound better on subsequent Muse records than he does here. But my God, is he annoying. He's the most annoying presence of this record. There's moments on this album, especially songs like Sober, where he's just doing this terrible, shitty, fucking type shit where he sounds like he's constipated. And it's amelodic for starters, right? For someone classically trained, he has a stultifyingly dull sense of vocal melody here. The first two songs, Sunburn, Muscle Memory, or Muscle, whatever it is, Museum, definitely the best two songs here. I think they're the most beloved songs on the record, generally speaking. And they're fine. They're good. I don't want to shit on poo-poo on them at all. Like, I enjoy them as much as I can enjoy any songs on a record that sounds like this. And then with the third track, Philip, and just on, it just fucking boom, it flatlines. It's just instantly pancakes right after those first two songs in a way that like really took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting, you know, because when I had heard this album once before, years ago, and I had it rated, you know, moderately as a sort of middling record. I remembered liking some songs, and it was interesting, like how the other songs I remembered, you know, vaguely having fond memories of, like the title track and Uno, and I revisit them, and I just fucking can't, especially Uno, which interpolates this classical melody of like the Blue Danube or one of those sort of classical pieces of music into a sort of guitar melody and makes that beautiful melody into something that sounds like monotonous and just sort of dry and dull. It's the kind of thing that if they did it now, they would like turn up the compression and layer on the crunch, and they would make it sound like Imagine Dragons. And they would definitely do that here if that was a thing in this time. It's just a record that does nothing for me. And it is also, you know, hurt by the fact that it frequently annoys the fuck out of me. And look, I'll see what happens with Origin of Symmetry, and to be fair, I don't think I'm going to hate any of those next three records because I've heard them a lot more than I've heard this, and I know them reasonably well. This was just a real like reality check, I suppose, into how, I guess, as I've grown, you know, this is not like me saying that I've, you know, matured and become better than Muse or whatever, but as I've grown up, my taste.
Well, I mean,
as I've grown up, my taste.
I like you a lot more than Muse.
Drifted away from this kind of music. Jesus. And I don't know. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. As I've grown up, my tastes have just sort of drifted away from this sort of stadium rock. And I like stadium rock. I just don't like stadium rock that takes itself seriously, that has any ambitions of being like a world conquering force. I like stadium rock that's about like, you know, driving cars really, really fast and having terrible sex. But, you know, like Meatloaf is my kind of stadium rock thing. I don't want...
Bicycle, I want to ride my bicycle.
Queen. Yeah, exactly. Queen is just stadium rock about being a fucking... And that's my shit. I'm gonna have to
Bicycle is his boyfriend.
Yeah. Right. That dick Muse are like a kind of band like Coldplay in the sense that the more they fuck up, the more shit they put out now, the less forgiving you are to their early stuff, which is good, but certainly where you're kind of like acknowledging and sort of looking past some of the limitations of it because of nostalgia or because of cultural significance or whatever. And then the more shit music they put out in the present, the harder it becomes to overlook the shallowness of their early work. And I think both bands are kind of in the process of doing that, of essentially kind of demolishing the, you know, the sense of goodwill that I feel towards their early work by just continually pumping out shite.
Blowing it.
But anyway, yeah. And the thing I tweeted while listening to it as well was like, it's like early Muse, I guess Muse in general, I kind of like, they're like editors for jocks. Like I thought a lot of editors while listening to this record, which is another band that's like, you know, have a very low ceiling in terms of like just, you know, how good they can be. They're never going to be a great band, but their early work has a kind of primal, you know, really straightforward but satisfying sort of post-punk influence rock edge to it that makes that stuff like a, you know, just like a good sort of fast food equivalent of, you know, better bands that you just want sometimes really hooky stuff that isn't, you know, overly complicated or whatever. And Muse kind of were served, early Muse kind of served that same purpose as early editors, but the difference being that like Muse step on their own toes a lot more frequently than a band like editors do, even though they're both kind of like, even though the frontman of both bands is kind of like a pretty pompous songwriter. Anyway, yeah, so that's my thoughts on Showbiz. I will be back this time next week to talk about Origin of Symmetry, a record that I know means a great deal to a lot of people. And so I will disregard all of that while talking about it. Now that you know I'm trapped. I'm only going to talk about one artist in my segment this week. And the reason for that is because I'm going to talk about 3 albums from this artist, because it's been a while since I have been on my best behavior and following the instructions of Jake as assigned to me in the quiz episode, listening to the discography of Muse. I haven't actually talked about them in one of these segments for a few weeks now, so I'm making up for lost time. And so I listened to their 2nd, 3rd, and 4th albums, generally the biggest and most well-known Muse records, Origin of Symmetry, Absolution, and Black Holes and Revelations. And I'm going to deliver the definitive take on each of these 3 records. And if you don't agree with me, you're wrong.
I love the confidence.
Origin of Symmetry is... It's so overrated, dude. It is not that good.
Ooh.
It has some good songs. Don't get me wrong. Newborn is a good start. Bliss is strong. Hyper Music has some nice energy to it. Plug In Baby, definitely an enduring Muse single for good reason. And that's it. Space Dementia. What are we doing, guys? This is just, it's very, a lot of this record doesn't hold up. And I feel as though the positive reception or the way in which this record is regarded is very much a rose-tinted glasses thing. Now, look, I came in really harsh when I talked about Showbiz, their debut, which I don't like. I'm not trying to imply that if you like any of these records, you're stupid or whatever. I understand the appeal of a record like Origin of Symmetry, and I do like some of the songs. But by the time you get to the second half of this thing, woof. I won't say it sounds bad, but I don't think it sounds all that great from a production standpoint, especially
remix version.
I've listened to both versions, and I actually think the remix version is somewhat of an improvement just because it has a little bit more color. It still doesn't really do much for me. But once you get to micro cuts and onwards, I'm checked out. Screenager, come on, guys. Dark Shines, these are perfectly mediocre Muse songs. Like, I feel similarly about those songs as I do about the deep cuts on Showbiz. And this is all to say nothing of the cover of Nina Simone's Feeling Good, which was actually originally written by Leslie Brucuss and Anthony Newley for Nina. And what tells you really all you need to know about how I feel about this cover and what it says, the choice to cover this song, is that from what I can gather, maybe someone will correct me on this, but neither Nina, Leslie, nor Anthony are credited for this song in the liner notes for this album. It is all songs by Matthew Bellamy. And Feeling Good is like the height of Matthew Bellamy's unbearable egotism. It's a terrible cover for starters. It is the most like, it takes a song that has a lot of pizzazz and flair and color to it and turns it into the most overwrought, just plodding, boring, and just completely over dramatized, sappy version of itself. It is gentrified blues bullshit, and I hate it with a fiery passion. I cannot stand any second of this cover. It is utterly awful. Look, if I am coming across as particularly harsh here, know that what I'm trying to do here is not tear down Muse fans, but simply own my feelings about Muse without insulting people's intelligence by pretending that I like any of these records more than I do. That said, Absolution is an improvement on Origin of Symmetry. For starters, it's a more consistent record. It has less of the wild variations in quality that Origin of Symmetry has. It's slightly more focused conceptually, and it is also front-loaded as hell. I'm not going to lie. This is
I like the back half of Absolution more than the front half.
Fair enough. This was a really painful experience revisiting this one, because I did not want my feelings on this to fall in the way that my feelings of Origin of Symmetry did. And yet, it's fine. I like the singles a lot. Time is Running Out, great. Stockholm Syndrome, one of their best songs. Hysteria, so good. I even like Falling Away With You, which is one of the more sort of portentous deep cut songs on here. I enjoy that to a certain extent as well. But when you hit Blackout onwards, it's, again, there's nothing as offensive on the back half of this as like Screenagers or the Feeling Good cover on Origin of Symmetry, but it just washes over me. Endlessly, Ruled by Secrecy, Blackout, as I already mentioned, the small print, sure. Functional Muse songs. Thoughts of a Dying Atheist, it's a little bit better than a song called Thoughts of a Dying Atheist might set you up to experience, but it's still like...
I think that's a pretty good ass song, honestly.
I don't want to die. Like, whatever, dude. I'm not able to get on the wavelength of Matt Bellamy here, and I've made my peace with that. All of this is to say, and I feel quite comfortable being quite candid on those two records, because I think Black Holes and Revelations is the best Muse album, and I think it's the best Muse album by some margin. Like, this is the only Muse album, unless I have some dramatic change in opinion on any of their later records, which who knows.
If you end up liking fucking drones more than this album,
not going to happen. What I will say is, for all of the shit I've flung at aspects of those first three records, Black Holes and Revelations is an album that I front to back really enjoy. Like, it has a couple of weaker moments, but they are not so distinct from the rest of the record that I'm really put off by them, nor are they as tragic in execution as some of the poorer moments in the previous records. It's a more concise album. It has most of their best songs on it. I'm just going to be straight up. And it is basically this band recognizing their strengths, leaning into them, and for the only time in their career, in my opinion, remembering to have fun with some regularity and consistency. This album is just awesome. I'm not even going to lie. Like, for as much as my opinions of the previous two records have kind of fallen a bit, with equal measure has my fondness for and appreciation for Black Holes and Revelations gone up. I mean, it definitely benefits from the fact that it is a very concise, basically, it's 11 tracks, but it's basically just 10 songs. Really concise record that basically trims most of the fat. I could do without Soldier's Poem or Hoodoo, but I don't hate them. Basically everything else I really like. And the first four songs on this record, I unequivocally love. Like Starlight, Supermassive Black Hole, and Map of the Problematique in particular is the best sequence of music on any Muse record. This is Muse realizing their stadium rock ambitions, matching that with production that actually does them justice and makes the music feel genuinely huge. Yeah, leaning into that hard riffy sort of thing that they are very prone to doing, but actually giving that some spunk and some genuine sense of energy and charisma. I think Supermassive Black Hole is their best song. Because it is just so completely just fucking fun and sick, and the falsetto that Matt leans into here is daring, but he pulls it off. It's a riotous song. I really like Starlight. That song has really held up for me over the years. The back half, I think, has some great deep cuts that really hold up. Assassin is an excellent song. City of Delusion, one of the most underrated Muse songs. And, of course, Knights of Sidonia.
Hell yeah.
The Guitar Hero anthem of Guitar Hero anthems.
Oh yeah, no,
Every bit
that's a
as
fun
good.
song.
Every bit as good as you remember it being. This is their, their Bohemian Rhapsody, their Paranoid Android, whatever you want to call it. It holds up. It's an awesome song. I unequivocally love it. And shout out to the bonus track, Glorious. The thing about Absolution and Black Holes and Revelations, both my two favorite Muse records, hot take, is that for some reason, the bonus track on both of them is like, there's no good reason for why this isn't on the album proper. Like Fury, it would, if it were on Absolution, would absolutely be top 3. Great song. And Glorious, if it were on Black Holes and Revelation, instead of say like Exopolitics, which is decent enough musically, but also has some of Matt's most like, oh, they're putting fluoride in the water to make your brain lyrics.
Government's trying to control your mind, man.
Take that shit out and put Glorious in, and I would be very inclined to give this the full bump to the 8 out of 10. As it stands, it's a really strong 7 with a basically impeccable first half.
I love that I have essentially like swapped. Like I have punished you with this discography so much more than I punished August with Toby Max.
But look, so
it's happened accidentally.
I have now made my feelings clear on the big canonical Muse releases. So shit on me all you want for my hot takes on Origin of Symmetry and Showbiz and Absolution. I am going to come to bat for Black Holes and Revelation any day of the week. I think this is one of the great stadium rock records of the modern era. I think that it set a template that so many bands like fucking Biffy Clyro and whoever you can name that have tried to do this big anthemic thing have never been able to capture. The songs here just hold up. And I listened to this a bunch this week, and I'm so glad that I don't dislike this at all, because I didn't want to have to be the sluggish, contrarian shitting on all the big Muse staples. Yeah, I
just
love
2 out of the 3,
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna get to, I think next week I might talk about I might just kind of group the next few Muse records into one segment. I'm actually really looking forward to revisiting The Resistance and The Second Law, because those are records that are full of like incredibly garish and just utterly terrible aesthetic decisions that I think are going to be really fun to talk about. So yeah, stick around for that. I'm going to probably have a few hot takes on certain songs that I do like on those records. All I will say is I have a complicated relationship with the music of Muse. I don't care for a lot of their most canonical stuff, and I find the utterly just terrible sense of aesthetic decision-making on some of their later work to be, at the very least, fascinating. So I'm going to talk a lot about that as we go on. And of course, I cannot wait for the release of their upcoming record, Will of the People. I have imbibed, ingested, I have put the singles for that album into my bloodstream, and it's like August with Editors, where I'm just like, just give it to me, just give me the sauce.
Give me that sweet mid, baby.
I cannot wait. I cannot fucking wait. And I want everyone at home to know who likes Muse, I'm not coming at any of these records from the perspective of wanting to hate them or of wishing anything negative on Muse. I want to like Muse at every turn, and there are moments when I really see the vision. I do, and I treasure those moments, and I have nothing but respect for a band. Like I said with
no such moments from here on out.
I said this with Gorillaz and our record club, which is going up in a couple of days' time, where it's like, even when I don't get on board with that band, there are moments when they're doing shit that's so garish and aesthetically tasteless that I have to kind of respect the sheer commitment to it. And that is the case. I think a lot of Gorillaz music tends to be better than a lot of Muse's later music, but I respect a lot of Muse's later music in the same way. And so if you're a Muse fan, stick around for my segments on those later records, because I think you might be less disappointed by how they turn out than you might expect. But save that for when the time comes. this has been my latest segment on Muse. I am in the throes of this discography dive, and I am having the time of my life. Now I get into a particular segment that I have been preparing for all week. Let's just stretch my muscles here for a second and just give myself a moment to take a breath so that we can talk a little bit about Muse. Because it's that time again. And believe me, I have something special for you today. So I said last week that how I was going to do this, considering that Muse's new album is coming out next week, and so we'll be reviewing it the week after, is that this week, today, I'm going to talk about the Resistance and the Second Law, and then next week I'm going to talk about drones and simulation theory. So let's start with the Resistance. I still have to revisit drones and simulation theory, but I would not be surprised if this ends up actually being my least favorite Muse album.
That doesn't shock me.
I tried to listen to, I actually tried to listen to this multiple times. I think I mentioned last week the fact that I couldn't get through it.
Yep.
Insufferable record, really badly produced for starters. Like the mixing is really bizarre. Sometimes it's too quiet. Sometimes it's really garish. And
Bad time.
the thing about this record is that there is so much sound on it. It's a really long album, right? It isn't even that long, but it's fucking long. And the thing is, Muse, for like a decent portion of this record, it's not even Muse. Like there's moments on here where
Not
they're just
really,
playing
no.
they're playing some Chopin, they're playing some classical music, they're doing putting some random shit in there. Matt Bellamy speaking French at some points for no particular reason. And you would think, oh, wow, you hear some Chopin. I mean, it's great. You're not hearing Muse. It's a fucking blessing. But for some reason, hearing Chopin show up at the end of a Muse song, a very, very famous piece of his, is only aggravating and really not at all that enjoyable. It's a record that's full of mystifying decisions. I mean, first of all, you don't really need to listen beyond the first three songs for starters, because that's really all that the record has to offer, and not all of those songs are even good. They're just like all the record really is, and all that people really know of it. Uprising, of course, probably the biggest single from this album.
That's how I found out about Muse. It was used in the trailer for the Tom Cruise vehicle Night and Day that no one has thought about in 10 years.
Yeah. So Uprising is not a song. It is a fucking monotonous Depeche Mode ripoff. Actually, it's a Goldfrapp ripoff, who, of course, was actually, let me be even more specific and make reference points that probably no one other than me will get. This song is specifically a ripoff of the Australian band The Presets song My People, which has a similar sort of, guttural bass synth groove, very much in the tradition of Depeche Mode via Goldfrapp circa 2005, who in a large part popularized this particular variant of techno electro disco stuff in the 2000s that I'm very nostalgic for. So Uprising is already taking from a tradition of music that means a lot to me, and it is just doing nothing with it. This is a song that starts nowhere and goes nowhere. It is a song that never starts, actually. There's probably a better way to put it. It takes that single iterating, distorted bass groove synth idea and does nothing with it. And Matt Bellamy just kind of whinging and whining about fucking opening your third eye or whatever. It's very stupid, it's very dumb, and it's not a song. And I don't care if you like it. The title track is a little better. It at least has music in it. Like, it's tangible. It has a memorable hook. Could be wrong. I actually kind of don't mind it. It's all right. The third track, which is, someone help me out here. What's it called? I can't even remember.
Oh,
Desired Constellation. Undisclosed Desires. That's it.
Yeah, that's the one.
That's probably the best song here. It is because it has a kind of like a sense of dynamics to it. Like there's it has a kind of sense of musicality and dynamics to it in a different original way. It feels like a kind of continuation of the sort of bouncier and more bright tones of Black Holes and Revelations, which I said last week is my favorite Muse album. And then the record just completely stops being a thing after that. United States of Eurasia, the Exogenesis trilogy, Unnatural Selection, which is, to be clear, the longest song of all time, a song that never starts and definitely never ends. I mean, my God, what a fucking joke. I mean,
but Ryley, they want the truth. They want the truth.
It's like Matt Bellamy's here.
Do you get it?
Yes. And this brings me to an aspect of Muse.
Revolution.
I think by this point in my discussion of the Muse discography, I can really crystallize what Muse is and what aspects of what Muse is that I like and when it goes wrong, which it does admittedly more often than it goes right for me. But Muse are, obviously they're a big bombastic stadium rock band. They want to be Queen. They want to be U2. They want to be in that tradition. And they are a fundamentally ridiculous proposition. And they know that, right? They lean into the ridiculousness on every record. And I have no doubt that Matt Bellamy has a certain level of self-awareness about how ridiculous he sounds. The problem a lot of the time is that they try to pair that ridiculousness with an utterly contradictory sense of self-seriousness, self-righteousness, and vague gestures at meaning. And these two states exist in such conflict with each other that it creates an often unlistenable experience. Regardless of how good the music is, that conflict of identity, of Muse wanting to be ridiculous, but also kind of fundamentally failing to have an active sense of humor about their ridiculousness, really creates an utter dissonance in terms of what Muse are and what they want to be. And of course, there are moments when that doesn't happen. There are moments when they strip back the seriousness for the most part, and they really embrace having fun. And I talked about this last week. This is why Black Holes and Revelations is the best Muse album, because it's a fundamentally ridiculous record that does fundamentally ridiculous things. It owns that. It keeps the finger wagging and sloganeering to a minimum. And even when it does do that, it dresses it up in songs that are lively and full of color and interesting ideas and just a great sense of charisma and presence. So Black Holes and Revelations is what happens when that is done right, when that is done with that sense of levity. And the Resistance is what happens when it's done wrong, when it's soiled and soured and bogged down by all of this vague gesturing at meaning. And the self-awareness is still there, but it's weirdly diluted, and it's as though Muse are trying to be two distinct entities at the same time. They're trying to be this fundamentally ridiculous Queen-style band, and they're trying to be this, hard-on sleeve U2 style band. And look, I love Queen and I love U2 within particular eras, particularly. But those are very different bands. They're both exuberant, exaggerated bands that do very silly and very campy things, but they are still very, very distinct in what they try to do and very, very distinct in what they do well. And so Muse trying to be both at the same time is a recipe for disaster. Black Holes and Revelations is one instance where I think they get the balance right. And the second law is another, because I have come around to liking this record quite a bit. And I was ready to unleash this take.
Are you smoking crack cocaine, Ryley?
No, I am. I've never had more clarity in my life. Now, let me be clear. There are exceptions. There are particularly indulgent and silly moments on this record that have that sense of fun and campiness to them, but lose it a little bit in trying to be gesturing towards profundity, specifically in the second law 2-part tracks that end the record. That's the biggest falter. And it's not just because aesthetically they're ugly as hell. It's just because I would actually enjoy them a little bit more if they just stripped away the spoken word vocals about how, we can only exert so much energy and humans are all about whatever. Enough of that. But the rest of this record, I really enjoy, and I have only enjoyed it more and more and more. And I have been so looking forward to getting to speak about this because I feel like I've kind of started to really understand not only why, because I have enjoyed this in the past and sort of just been a little bit about, I don't really know why I'm finding this so fun, but now I get it. I get it. And it is Muse are being ridiculous. They're being silly as hell. And for the most part, they're owning that. And they're not trying to pretend that it's anything other than that. Supremacy is a ridiculous attempt at trying to do a Bond theme type song. It has some of Bellamy's most disastrously funny vocals. And it also has a really kick-ass grooving riff that it absolutely sinks its teeth into, has these super over-the-top string parts that kind of come in as well. It reminds me of of watching, like Bond movies and stuff, and those really kind of ridiculous moments where it leans into the camp and niche of the character's history and the iconicness of it and stops being just another action movie. Ridiculous stuff. I enjoy it. I really find that stuff satisfying because there's no sense in which with a song like Supremacy, Muse are trying to be anything other than an absolutely balls to the wall fucking bizarro band and just like being completely camp. I'm going to say it. Madness, which I think is probably the best song here, is one of 3 songs that integrates the infamous Muse step dubstep elements. Definitely the song that does that.
Did you just say that Madness is the best?
Yes, I did. Definitely a song that does this the most tastefully of the 3 songs. I mean, by far on this record, because it keeps it to a kind of bedrock sort of style as opposed to being this chief focus of the song. But this is a beautifully constructed track. It builds slowly and tastefully for the most part as well, ends in a really kind of full-on, full-throated falsetto moment as well, has some of the best melodies that Muse have designed in the fucking 6 years leading up to this. Really satisfying song. And I think those 2 are really the peaks of the record, in tandem with a deep cut that I really love as well, that I never hear anyone talking about, which is the song Big Freeze, which is another moment on the record where I feel like they really own how kind of just over the top and emotional they can be when they really focus in on that. And I'm going to, next week when I talk about Drones, it's going to be like night and day, because that record is every bit the opposite of what this record is. But there are songs on this record that I've come to really enjoy, because especially in the context of doing this discography and appreciating when Muse work for me and when they don't work for me, there has never been, ever in the Muse discography before this or since this, such a bold-faced commitment to ridiculousness as there are in songs like Panic Station, Survival, and Follow Me, which are songs I can't say in all good conscience are good, but I can say full-throatedly that I enjoy, particularly Survival, which is maybe the most over-the-top fucking garish and insane. And this is the thing, like with Muse, and I say this about a lot of bands that try to be ridiculous and all that sort of thing. If you're going to do it, commit, go full throttle. And Muse has always kind of like half done that and then tried to kind of claw back credibility by attaching some kind of like vague concession to musical taste, right? They've always tried to do, and that's hampered their music, because as soon as I try to get into it, they're then trying to convince me, oh no, we're actually good TM in, all of the critical senses and stuff. The Second Law is the one album where Muse don't ever try to do that, more or less. They just completely let themselves go hog fucking wild. And Survival, Follow Me, which is really garish dubstep song. I kind of hate it, but I also admire it for the reasons that I've stated. I have no compulsion to skip these songs when I've been listening to this record. It has some good deep cuts as well. I've already mentioned Big Freeze, which I think is one of the best Muse songs, full stop. Animals, I think, is an underrated song as well. Explorers, I could definitely do without. I think that song is a little bit redundant and definitely goes on for too long. Like I said, this is far from a flawless record, even in terms of what it wants to achieve. It absolutely has a ceiling. Save Me, I think, is another really underrated deep cut. This was like listening to this with the kind of clean picked guitars and the real sort of shoegazy atmosphere. It made me think of like, this is like the quiet song on the Deaf Heaven album. It's like the near on Ordinary Corrupt Human Love type beat. Like it's really pretty and it has that same sort of thing that it is borrowing from, although of course it came before Deaf Heaven were even really a thing, which makes it all the more satisfying, I suppose. And yeah, and then it does end on with a limp note, unfortunately. Liquid State doesn't really do much for me. Isolated System, the closer, is just not a song. It doesn't really start. And Unsustainable is unquestionably the worst piece of music this band have ever produced, like without a doubt. And I look, and even I can't get past how fundamentally ear scraping this is to even enjoy it on the same level as I enjoy something like Follow Me. It would be a little bit easier if the cloying spoken word vocals that I mentioned before weren't there, but still, you know, it's the kind of thing that definitely befits a record like this, but it's just not executed with the same sense of humor that the rest of the record is. And yeah, so it's not my favorite Muse record. That is still Black Holes and Revelations. It has its moments where it doesn't quite fully grasp, or it does kind of skirt away from fully committing to what it wants to do. Again, Muse's worst tendencies, they shoot themselves in the foot by trying to pretend at any point in time that they can be a serious band. Guys, you'll never be a serious band. You're never going to be fucking Radiohead, and you don't want to be. So stop trying to be. Keep making records that are totally camp, that are totally ridiculous, that totally own what they are. And don't make shit like The Resistance. Don't make shit like Drones, where you think you can actually actuate some kind of change and end up only really appealing to 4chan Reddit borders. I'll also say as well, just to kind of add a cherry on top of the shit cake that I'm delivering to Jake and Morgan right now, that I do think this is probably, with the exception, the very notable exception of the more egregious dubstep moments, this is probably the best produced Muse album. Like, this is the
Shut
one.
up. God, what have I done? Oh, Jesus.
I mean, seriously, I wouldn't say it's better produced than Black Holes and Revelations necessarily. And certainly with their earlier records, it's kind of weird to compare production because they're just at that point going for such a different thing. But, you know, for the most part, this record sounds really, really clean. It has a lot of muscle to it. The songs sound really bright, and they have that sense of maximalism that you would, of course, want from a record like this, but they're never overly compressed or made to sound like particularly brittle. It's a record that, I mean, I guess maybe with the exception of Explorers, again, I don't really care for that song. But yeah, on the whole, I'm pretty positive on this record. I enjoyed it a great deal. It's one of the only, it is the only time in this Muse deep dive where I have listened to a record more than twice, specifically to prepare for this segment. So, shoot me. The Second Law, or more like the second best Muse album.
Oh, better than fuck off. Oh my God. I don't even like Muse this much. Jesus Christ.
Saying that the Second Law is better than Absolution or Origin of Symmetry is the single worst take to ever be shared on this podcast.
Look, I like it more. I'll say that. I don't know if it's better.
That's not better. That's not better.
To quote you in our quiz video, well, good. You can fall asleep at night knowing that.
Hey, I don't get to. I feel like I haven't gotten to have a moment like this in a while, so I'm really, really treasuring it.
No, I'm happy.
A moment where I think I have to have you committed.
I feel like if I had to do this a year ago, I would have just been a little bit too self-conscious to fully just own how I feel. I would be giving more and more
prostrate yourself like this.
Yeah, but no, I've never felt more virile than I have right now, talking about how much I like Muse's The Second Law. An album, it should be said that I've given 3 stars, so, it's not like I'm saying it's a masterpiece, but it is a very, very silly record that I have a very, very fun time listening to.
Let's never speak of this again.
Your ass belongs to me now! Aye, sir!
I'm going to start off by concluding an ongoing series that I have been doing in this segment for several weeks off and on. That, of course, being the Muse discography. I was assigned by Jake for losing the quiz, and I finally reached the end. As we record this, it is basically, for me, it's the day after the new albums come out. I haven't heard it yet. We will be reviewing it next week. I'm going to listen to it very shortly. I'm very excited. But in order to make myself ready for that, I finally managed to revisit all of their other albums. And today I'm going to be talking about Drones and Simulation Theory. Terrible, terrible albums. They're bad. They have nothing. Just complete wastelands of creativity. I mean, for God's, I don't know how to be original about this, because they're albums that are so clowned on, particularly Drones, right? Which is like, it's such a boring thing to say that Drones is the worst album they've made. But like, when you're listening to it, it is okay. So it has a couple of good moments. Reapers, by far the best song on that record. The one that has the most actual musical grit to it, and the least unbearably cloying, repetitive sloganeering. That song's all right. The Handler is not bad either. That's okay. Dead Inside, that single, is not very good, but it's bearable.
I find Dead Inside kind of entertaining in a this is so stupid.
Yeah, absolutely.
A
lot of Muse songs have that stupidity appeal, and I would say Dead Inside is one of them. Like, I don't hate that song. I think it's very mediocre, but it has some elements about it that I enjoy in a very campy, silly way. That reminds me of some of the Muse songs I've talked about in previous segments that I really enjoy. But I mean, the second that finishes and you go into that fucking drill sergeant interlude that leads into Psycho. Are you a human drone? Are you a killing machine? Aye, sir. Like, literally, I'm checked out. We're gone. And then Psycho is the worst Muse single ever. Not the worst Muse song ever, but the worst Muse single ever. An absolute joke. I mean, I remember when it first dropped, and it was funny then, and it's not lost any of its fucking hilarity now. It's like the Personal Jesus riff by way of the Elephant by Tame Impala. Two songs I love, right? I love that guitar tone.
I don't love the idea of Muse interpolating them, however.
But this is just the most dumbass fucking shit. The thing is, like, I'm gonna make you. I'm gonna break you. I'm gonna make you. I feel like it's like, come on. How is that not funny? And look, here's the thing, right? Is I get that, and I've spoken about this before. I get that Muse are self-aware. I get that they know how ridiculous they're being.
Not an excuse.
Exactly, especially when the songs here are as humorless as these ones are. You can be self-aware all you want, but you've got to have a sense of fucking humor about it. And that is the thing that distinguishes when Muse do this garish shit in a way that I find entertaining, and when it makes me want to claw my own eyeballs out of my skull and eat them. And Drones is that record. Psycho, Mercy, Defector, Revolt, all 1 out of fucking 10 songs. Aftermath, a 0 out of 10.
A Muse song called Revolt is like a Pink Floyd song called Society. Like, get over yourself.
Well, the thing about fucking Pink Floyd, it's funny you fucking bring them up, because this is a stupid cock rock record for the first half of it, until it suddenly decides it wants to be fucking Wish You Were Here for the last 20-25 minutes. It tries to do this fucking pathetic David Gilmour pastiche bullshit. Suddenly decides to... Aftermath actually would fit right in on the final cut. And to be honest, it's got that fucking type of self-satisfied, smug, my life is the most tragic fucking shit in the world. Complete fucking entity lyrics that don't mean anything. And then the Globalist happens, which is this 10-minute fucking epic where they're trying to do a fucking Shine On You fucking crazy fucking diamond fucking bullshit song. Fucking 5 minutes of build up, fucking stupid ass riffs that are no fucking different to the other fucking riffs I've already been fucking hearing on this fucking album. And it just goes on and on and on. And it's like the fucking 4th best song on the album. Shut the fuck up. Drones is a good name for it, and that's all I'm going to say. Simulation theory.
Okay, Ryley, honest question. Because legitimately, I am so confused. Why do you hate this and like the second law?
Let me try to explain this to you, all right?
Please,
bucko?
I'm begging.
Because I have been thinking about this, right? So simulation theory, I was curious whether going back to this, my opinion would improve on it now that I was able to kind of properly articulate what I enjoy about the second law. And I've ended up in this weird place where I hate this album even more than Drones now. For starters, it doesn't have any songs on it that are as good as the 2 songs that I like on Drones. It has the first 2 songs, Algorithm and The Dark Side, which are passable, I guess, kind of boring and uninspired. It has Pressure, which is, I guess, the song you probably are most likely to remember from this because it was beaten to death by rock radio. I remember as well in the at the end of, well, it was my summer for me, winter for you, of the end of 2018 into 2019, I worked in a grocery store butchery for 3 months. Worst job I've ever done. Fucking hated every second of it. Completely surrounded by the most fucking thick as pig shit, stupid ass motherfuckers that you could ever imagine at the fucking ass end of this fucking stupid country. And I had to listen to rock radio all the time. And this song was played at least 10 times a day, every day. And look, let me be completely upfront here. It's nowhere near the worst song Muse have made, but it's probably the one I hate the most purely because of the experience I've had to endure it on. It's such a, again, it's like they're doing the same fucking ripoff of a ripoff that they've already done on 6 or 7 different albums, right? It's so stupid. And the rest of the album completely flatlines from there. And not only does it flatline, it goes and explores some musical ideas that are so garish and so ill-conceived that it's kind of awe-inspiring. And I get what you're fucking thinking. You're thinking about, what about Muse Step on the second floor? Wasn't that suddenly cool for some reason? Well, if you cast your minds back, you'll remember that I had a fucking ceiling with the Muse Step stuff on the second law. Some of it I liked and some of it I didn't like. And here we have Trap Muse, all right? Trap Muse, not just 1 or 2 songs as well. It's a very consistent theme, trap-flavored hi-hats coming through this. And let me try and make myself absolutely clear here. With Muse Step, with the synthetic electronic elements on the second law, they were thoughtfully integrated. They fit in the mixes of the songs. They were actually produced. There were moments where they were more garish and ill-fitting than others, but it didn't feel like they were being retrofitted to the songs that already existed. It felt like, okay, they conceived these songs with this in mind. And Madness does that well enough or subtly enough to not completely overthrow the song. Whereas these songs are like, it's not even just Muse goes trap. It's that Muse throws a fucking trap beat in the middle of a song that's like a fucking rock opera bullshit fucking 80s pop rock pastiche. It's already ripping off. No, shut up. Let me talk. It's already ripping off fucking 3 or 4 different eras of vaguely pastiche fucking remember when bullshit genres that were never any fucking good at the time anyway. You might as well be doing a fucking Guns N' Roses song for all I care. Like it's smashing together three genres no one ever fucking liked in the first place, and then fucking just trying to fucking make that shit make sense. Matt Bellamy has some uninspired lyricism. Matt Bellamy has some cliched lyricism in some of these later Muse records, you know, and it's whatever. You know, it serves the song. When I tell you the lyricism on this album is beyond cliche and literally brain cell destroyingly dumb, I am not joking you when I say the lyricism on this album made me want to fucking cut my right hand off so I could never write because I was so ashamed of the English fucking language. This album is mind-numbingly stupid in ways that are so unrewarding for your commitment to it. Thought Contagion and Get Up and Fight, Something Human, Blockades, Dig Down, the fucking lead single that I fucking unfortunately remember when it first fucking came out. Propaganda is... How is Propaganda not the worst song on this album? If you don't remember it, go and fucking listen to it after this. And fucking...
I'm good.
Try and get your head around the fact that this is not even the first or second worst song on this album. I hate this so much. I hate this more than most things that we have reviewed on the show in any format. This album made me literally want to throw up. It was that bad. And I'm sorry if that can't be reconciled in your animal brain with my enjoyment of the dumbness of the second law. But look, that album has grit. That album has passion. That album has actual like commitment to its stupidity. This is just like, it's AI generated. Every single song is AI generated Muse fucking type beat bullshit retrofitted into some garish aesthetic that makes fucking Neil Young's Trans look like Daft Punk. Shut up. I don't want to make this hard for you any harder than it needs to be. You and I both know how this is going to go, and it's a road we've been down before. And it's a dynamic, I think, that actually makes for really entertaining podcast content. But I realize it can be somewhat morale defeating to have to go through it. So I'll just state for the record, in case we have any Muse fans watching, I am quite enjoying this album. I think this record is a bucket of fun. I think this record is ridiculously entertaining. And I think it trims a lot of or it completely does away with a lot of the aspects of the previous two Muse records that I outright despised, which was the self-seriousness, the kind of just ridiculous ponderance. These are songs that slap you in the face. Every single song on this record slaps you in the face, except for Ghost, which is kind of just, you know, whatever. Every song on this record slaps you in the face, and it's like you're either going to appreciate the ridiculousness with which they do that, or it's going to completely turn you off entirely, and you're going to be like, why am I listening to someone slapping me in the face? I will say things that I do enjoy about the record, just to get them up front there. For starters, I say I really enjoy Will of the People, the song. I think it's ridiculous. I think the riff is really, really fun. I think it has the single funniest moment on this record. And I didn't even pick up on this until like the third or fourth time that I listened to this song. And I had to literally play it back to double check that I wasn't fucking hearing things. But there's a specific moment about halfway through the title track where like the will of the people is repeating over and over and over about 30 seconds. And one iteration, just one, people is changed to sheeple. And it's one like seriously one repetition of Will of the People is Will of the Sheeple, and you could literally miss it like I did the first few times I listened to it. But when I caught it, I had to double back and make sure my brain wasn't just making that up. No, it's seriously, I listened to it over and over to make sure it was there, and it is. All right. that is the funniest moment on this album. I think that You Make Me Feel Like It's Halloween is the most demented and stupid song this year, this side of Ghost's 20s.
Like,
You know
where
what?
does this come from? Like, where, like, did they just make this song separately and then just stick it here?
It is fucking hilarious, dude. And I absolutely
no way
get
this
a
was
goofy
meant for this
fucking grin
album.
on my face every single time it comes on. Those fucking chintzy ass, like B-movie horror, fucking Phantom of the Opera rip-off organ sounds. And then
It sounds like a Spirit Halloween theme song.
It is.
Don't
and
listen
it-
to fucking visions of bodies being burned if you want spoopy music.
Yeah, but that is
Yeah.
like, that's
Good.
not even going for remotely the same vibe as what this song is going for. This song is just going for being stupid as hell. And it's fucking entertaining. All right. That's all I will say. And look, I made this comp in our group chat, and I think it automatically probably sent Jake on a depressive spiral. But I truly feel like this album, it has some level of kinship with Ghost's Impera. I'm not saying that I think this record is as good as Impera. I think Impera is light years better than this and more consistently holistic and well put together as a whole. But like it goes through the same kind of deliberately leaning into the goofiness as Impera does. And Halloween is its 20s essentially. And I feel the same way about this song as I do about 20s. And I don't even want to explain it because you can just go and listen to me talk about 20s. Killer Be Killed, I
Like
already
fucking
said, I love the
Kevin
song.
Parker.
Unironically, aside from all the goofiness and silliness, I think Verona is just genuinely one of the best deep cuts that Muse have ever recorded. The song is beautiful. It has a
Straight
gorgeous
thin
guitar
ass
line.
synth tones.
It has, look, I'm not going to take anything away from, I'm not going to be combative on this. Gorgeous guitar line, gorgeous vocal from Matt, very kind of longing and sappy, but also, you know what, so is Ghost. And I like it better when it's silly as opposed to when it's like, you know, I'm so lonely or whatever he's doing on that song. Euphoria is ridiculous as hell. I dig the shit out of its sheer ostentatiousness. And I've even come around a little bit on Compliance, which used to be like my absolute, well, it probably, no, it's not my least favorite on the record, but it used to be with the Bullet. But I do appreciate the fact that that song does have, for as garish as its synths are, the synths and the vocals definitely still being the weakest part of it. I do really appreciate there's a level of like unnecessary sophistication in the bass part, and the rhythm section in general in that song is doing, I think, a lot of the legwork in a way that does, I think, give it a little bit more dynamics than maybe I initially thought it had. Liberation is like the most ostentatious, obvious Queen ripoff that this band have ever done. And it's like this band have done a lot of those, but nowhere have they kind of just leaned into it more than this. And to my chagrin, I kind of enjoy that. Won't Stand Down is the most like, I'm kind of glad they released this as the lead single because it's the most like just Frankenstein's monster ass song on this entire record. Just little bits of musical ideas just kind of stitched together that and in ways that make no sense. You transition from that legitimately heavy riff to that garish synth stuff, and it sounds legitimately like, what the fuck is happening? It's disorienting. I hate it. And I kind of enjoy those parts of it that are genuinely tough as nails, even though they kind of just completely veer off it. And I do think that one of the things that Matt has said, like, it's not an ambitious record, except in one extent, which is that their band are trying to be genuinely heavy at certain moments in ways they haven't been before. And I think they pull it off for the most part. I think like Killer Be Killed, I think is a genuinely gnarly song with a really great sounding metallic riff. I think the moments where they go for that heaviness more or less work. And yeah, this is just the whole week. Let me tell you something. This is the last thing I'll say, I promise. This whole week, once I first heard this and realized I didn't hate it, I was like, how can I defend this in a way where I get to maintain some level of integrity? And it was this awful situation mentally to go through of like, yeah, but da-da-da-da-da. And I just realized after a certain point, I need to not fucking care about trying to maintain integrity or anything like that, or trying to be like super self-conscious about my opinion. I just need to fucking own it. The same way as I did with the more garish moments on Impera or whatever. And or like the first couple of songs on that Panic at the Disco record that I still is a terrible album, but I still, to my chagrin, like those first couple of songs on it. And here it's just like, I don't know what's changed. I don't know what is happening to me more recently, but it's just been easier and easier for me to enjoy this kind of music. And I do genuinely think that this is the best album Muse have put out since The Second Law. I know that's like a hilarious sentence for anyone other than me to hear, but I do think this is rising to a certain standard in terms of commitment that Muse haven't held themselves to since that point. It is currently my fourth favorite Muse album, behind Black Holes and Revelation, which is still my number one, Second Law, which is my number two, and then Absolution, which is my number three. It's number four behind those. So yes, I think this is a better album than Origin of Symmetry and Showbiz, and you can suck my dick about it. Not you two. I know you two don't really care, but the people out there who might, whatever. This is the most I think I've enjoyed a Muse album since The Second Law. It's not perfect, even to the standards of a Muse album. Like it has moments that I think I would seriously encourage rethinking, even for what this is trying to be. Those being particularly Won't Stand Down and We Are Fucking Fucked. But on the whole, I've had fun with it. It's a stupid fucking brain dead album that is so much more tolerable than most of the stupid brain dead albums we've reviewed this year.